This is TWiT.
Twitter co-founder Biz Stone has been away from the Twitter game for quite a while, but today announced that he'll be returning to the company. Joining us to discuss what this means for Twitter is Kurt Wagner from Recode. How's it going, Kurt?
Hey guys, how you doing?
Doing awesome. Even better now that you're here. We appreciate you joining us. First things first, aside from being the co-founder of Twitter along with Jack Dorsey, what initially did Biz bring to the table during his time with the company? What was he known for back then?
Yeah, Biz obviously did a lot of stuff as co-founders do when companies are first getting off the ground. But the thing I always kind of thought of in terms of Biz's role was really, kind of being this public face of the company. He's a very positive, outspoken, super chatty guy. I think he dealt a lot with kind of the early press and early celebrities and getting the product into the right people's hands to kind of promote Twitter early on. And, for those who have talked to Jack and Ev, they're a little bit more reserved and quiet. Biz is not that way. So I think, as Twitter was kind of growing this platform and growing this publicity around itself, I think he was pretty central to that whole effort in the early days.
Then he stepped away, of course, back in 2011. He stepped out of his role at Twitter, kind of went to work on some of his own ventures. What are a few of those things, and how have they done over the years? I know I've used Jelly, not very much, but I used it a little bit.
We all used it. We all kind of used it because it was Biz's thing, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So Jelly started as this Q&A kind of app where you would go out and literally use it like an Ask Jeeves kind of thing, I guess, was the initial, maybe like a new form Google where you would ask it a question and then it would go out and actually find a human being to answer your question, so that you were kind of connecting with humans to figure out the answers to whatever was going on in your life. Then for a while, that kind of pivoted and it became this social network where you would share photos with like weird, funky glasses. And then that was short-lived, and he kind of came back to the Q&A thing and was like, hey, we need to make this work. This is our last chance. We're not going to keep wasting money if we can't figure this out. And then they sold it to Pinterest. And my understanding is the sale was more of I'm a little surprised, I guess, because of the Twitter thing, because my understanding was the sale was felt more like an acqui-hire than anything.
Right.
I don't know how much of the technology Pinterest is actually going to use. And, bringing in someone like Biz who had helped grow Twitter seemed like a logical thing. But now he's back at Twitter. So that's why I was a little surprised by what's happening today, because they had just announced this deal a few months ago for his startup to be, acquired by Pinterest. And
he said on Medium he's back full-time, or he will be back full-time to Twitter. Do we know kind of what his role will be once he starts back here, I'm assuming in a few weeks?
Yeah, so he doesn't have an official title that I'm aware of. My understanding is he's going to report to the CMO, Leslie Berland, and it's the role is being described as kind of like a internal communications, internal morale, like how to get the company culture going again. For those who have spent time with Biz, I mean, he has an infectious personality. Like, he can talk. I remember interviewing him about Jelly and being like, hey man, what is this thing? Like, this is your third time going after it. And even then he's describing his struggles as an entrepreneur, and it makes you smile because just the way that he kind of tackles everything is with so much optimism. So I think, if you're Twitter and you say, hey, we can bring back a co-founder, he's going to speak at all hands meetings, he's going to get people fired up, he's another voice of support for Jack, clearly. Maybe this is, who knows if he's even being paid. I don't know. I assume he is. But like, my guess is that this is just a way to kind of get things jump-started internally at the company. And I guess if you're going to have one co-founder come back and do that, Biz would be the guy.
What is the company morale like these days? Do you have any insight to that? I mean, culture obviously is important and bleeds through pretty much everything, as we've seen with a lot of the troubles going on with Uber lately and a lot of the ways that culture has shaped, Google and Facebook and Apple over the years. But what is Twitter's culture like, and essentially what does Biz need to fix or alter?
It's a good question, and I feel like part of the issue is that Twitter's culture, from my understanding, seems to change pretty regularly, right? I think it's hard to move quickly past the fact that they had layoffs for the second time in the fall. That until last quarter, when they kind of had a unexpected spike in user growth, like they had like 5 or 6 quarters in a row that were pretty big bummers for Wall Street. So you're sitting there, you're watching executives leave, you're watching the stock go down, you're watching your friends or your colleagues get laid off. Like this is what it has been like at Twitter for the last couple of years. And even their product efforts, like this live video stuff, they get the NFL and then they lose the NFL, right? So I think that the culture is such that people are looking for some continuity. I think people are looking for some positive, hey, are we going to make this as a standalone company, or is our future being acquired by some bigger entity? People on the outside don't know that, but I also don't think people on the inside know the answer to that. And so it's just an unsettling place. And when the top executives are leaving, as did kind of in the back half of 2016. I haven't noticed as many departures so far this year, but I just think it's hard to always have new bosses and new focuses for the company. So maybe Biz can, I don't know, it seems like too big of a job for one person to come in and all of a sudden change how people think about their own employer. I think that happens more with product direction and success as a company. Like a few more quarters of good success would probably do more than Biz could ever do, to be honest. But I think having someone with Jack's support, someone who's been there from the beginning, who truly, truly believes in Twitter, I think that's kind of what he brings.
It kind of made me laugh reading through the Medium post. There's a part of it where Biz says, you might even say the job description includes being Biz Stone.
Biz Stone.
I kind of had to roll my eyes a little bit. What exactly does that translate to? Is that kind of part of this, like, this aura that he brings with him, this kind of nice guy, unite people, bring everybody into the vision that it once had? Is that what being Biz Stone means?
I think so. I think he feels like the kind of guy that everyone can get along with, right? And he's probably not going to be someone who's in there looking for money and a lot of power or anything like that. Like he's not someone who has to come in and say, I really need to prove myself by taking over this team or this project or whatever it may be. At least this is my experience with him and kind of my takeaway from this whole thing. Obviously, once he gets in the door, it'll be maybe a little bit different. But I think when he says like my job is to be Biz Stone, I mean he's funny, he's positive, he's rah. He believes in Twitter, and his job is to go in there and do all of those things. It's not to fix all of Twitter's problems, but to be someone who people can look to for inspiration, I suppose.
Yeah.
So one of the other things that was mentioned in his Medium post announcing this change was that he had made some connections over the years, and he was actually lined up to take another job, but Twitter being the most important work of his life, he couldn't really say no to that. So do you have any idea what he gave up to take this job at Twitter?
I don't know. My initial gut was that this was a Pinterest job, right? That he was going to advise Pinterest's co-founder, Evan Sharp, and who heads all of their product, and was going to be more involved in what Pinterest is doing, which I thought was interesting at the time, because again, here's someone who saw, a maturation, if you want to call it that, of Twitter over the years, and Pinterest is going through its own growth at the moment. So that was my initial thought, but I don't know, because now it sounds like he's still going to advise Pinterest, even in his role at Twitter. So he's not really giving up that advisor job, which is what I thought maybe this was referring to. I have a tough time picturing Biz as just like your run-of-the-mill venture capitalist in Silicon Valley. I could be totally wrong. Maybe he had a gig lined up at a VC firm. I can try and find out. But my guess is, that was my gut reaction was the Pinterest thing. So this is a really long way of me saying I actually don't know exactly what he gave up for this, but he's still doing Pinterest and Twitter at the same time.
And I mean, Wall Street almost immediately responded pretty favorably. The stock price in trading kind of jumped up, settled down a little bit since then, but still, that's like an early sign that they approve.
Baby Biz bump there a little bit, not too big.
So that might be a good indicator longer term about their kind of feelings. I don't know, their positive reaction to the news. So.
I guess I'd like to meet someone who's reads this and says I'm going to pour more money into Twitter as a result. I just don't know. I really have enjoyed chatting with Biz over the years. I have no problems with him coming back. I just don't know, where folks are looking and saying, hey, this is worth buying the stock again. But Wall Street reacts to a lot of different things in a lot of different ways that I don't understand. So. maybe it was just that initial excitement around having some positive news for Twitter,
right.
Which doesn't always happen.
So. Yeah, which would explain why it jumped up and then it settled back down again. It was like, oh, yeah, we're excited, but not that excited. Kurt Wagner with Recode, always great to get you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us today.